And boom, we're on. What's up, Jason?
Hey, not much. How are you doing today, Travis?
Doing good, man. Thanks for being on. I mean, this is cool. So you're a hunter.
I am. I've been well, geez, I think the first time I went hunting was probably 4 years old.
Oh wow, really?
No, obviously not by myself, and obviously I
Right.
didn't do anything but accompany the people out there. We went duck hunting
Oh,
as a
okay.
young kid, and was out in the blind, and really it was nothing more than exposing me to it. And honestly, I couldn't tell you that I remember anything about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I've I've grown up, if not hunting, being around hunters my whole life. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's not a unusual thing here in Michigan. Heck, growing up, the first day of deer season. When I say that, I mean rifle season, which is November 15th. That is pretty much a holiday with most schools closed that day. Uh,
Whoa, really?
it has changed now where they don't close the schools as much because there's not as many kids. But when I
Mm-hmm.
was younger, uh, that was a school holiday. The school was closed because there was no reason in having the kids come in because there weren't going to be enough kids to matter. It was also the same for pheasant season. Uh,
Uh-huh.
that was a big bird that was around here. There was lots of them, and opening day of pheasant season was also a school holiday where there was no school.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that's we talked about this beforehand too, but that's just totally foreign to me. Growing up in California, we have no I don't think I've ever even met someone who is really considers themselves a hunter around here.
Yeah, that's probably a little bit of a unique. I mean, you're in California and you're in the greater Los Angeles area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are certainly a number of hunters there. But LA, oh, I should not LA, but California is a little bit different in that um, I think there's more of the anti-hunting movement comes out of California than the hunting movement. But it's unique because once you leave that kind of LA bubble or that San Francisco area or the San Diego area and get out into the the rest of California, I think you find that people are quite active in the outdoors as far as hunting, fishing. Um, but there are some weird rules there. One thing I personally have never understood is you guys have just an immense amount of mountain lions there. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of running a harvest where they actually say to the average hunter out there, we're going to harvest, and I'm making up numbers. I don't know what the number is for California, but we're gonna we're gonna sell 10 licenses to have 10 toms. A tom is a male lion,
Mm-hmm.
uh, harvested, and then that money comes into the state coffers and is used for other wildlife management projects. Instead of doing that, from what I understand, the state instead hires private, almost like a bounty hunter, to go out and hunt them and tries to keep it out of the news, out of the press.
Oh,
The mountain
interesting.
lions are still dying,
Yeah.
but in my scenario, the state gets the money to come in, and the money is used from license revenue to help with game wardens, help with habitat management, help with whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In the other way, it's paid out of the state coffer to private
Yeah.
hands to harvest these animals. That there is more than likely a market for conservation for hunters to use it.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I wonder that must be some sort of, public policy that just the way people in California perceive this, they just don't want to no politician wants to come out and have that available or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I've never heard about that. But we definitely do have mountain lion problems even here in LA. So I could see them something like that going on behind the scenes, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's more of a public um, perception. I
Yeah.
think and I've not had mountain lion to eat, but the people that I have talked to on my show
Mhm.
that have eaten it have said it's fantastic to eat,
Mhm.
very much like a pork. And so you're not talking about just somebody going out and shooting the animal and then saying, "Oh, great, it's dead," and walking away, or
Right.
taking the skin. You're going to utilize. pretty much everything of the animal. Now, obviously, you're not going to utilize the internal organs; those are going to stay out in the field. But the meat, the hide, everything's going to be used. And the bigger thing is, if I'm California, or if I'm sitting in Sacramento in the state legislature of California, and I'm sitting there going, well, we've got these 10 or 15 mountain lions that are going to die this year. Regardless of how I handle it, I need to remove those out of the population to keep it in check. Would I rather have the money come in and have sportsmen harvest them, or would I just rather pay and keep it quiet because I don't want to face the backlash of people that don't understand what's going on? Last I checked, California didn't have so much money running through it that the state budget could afford to just throw money out the windows. So
yes,
if it's like any other state, any ways that you can then trim the financing or trim the spending is probably not a bad way to do it.
Right. Yeah. And I'd be curious to know what's happening to the mountain lions if they do hire a private bounty hunter or something like that. What happens to the bodies after this guy gets them?
Most likely he takes them and utilizes them in whatever fashion he or she wants to.
Okay, at least there's something going on, I guess.
Possibly. That's a good question. I don't know. I would assume, or I hate to assume anything, but I would guess they might eat some, but it really depends on how many. If you've got 3 guys, and I use the term guys, I apologize to any women listening. It's a generic term I'm using because there are certainly women that hunt, and a lot of times I've been around women that hunt far better than men. So I just use the term guys. I apologize if I offend anybody. But if you've got 3 guys that are hunting and let's say they each take 5, I don't know if they would eat them all. I honestly don't know how that would play out. So that's a good question.
Yeah. Now, so what about, we have a lot of coyotes here in our area too, that kind of, I don't know if they're necessarily that big of a problem, but they kind of, they'll kill people's dogs in their backyard and stuff, and you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. Is there anything going on with coyotes that you know of, that people are hunting coyotes, or is that kind of a different realm?
No, I mean, if you take a step back for just hunting in general for a moment, there's the ability, there's several ways that people can hunt, and I'm going to take a big step back here for a moment. There's archery and there's gun season, which are usually the 2 main seasons. There are some other things, black powder and so forth, but for the most part, it's archery and firearm season. Mm-hmm. Inside there, under archery, it could be a traditional longbow, could be a compound bow, could be a crossbow. Under firearm season, it could be a rifle, could be a shotgun, could be a muzzle loader. So once you determine how you want to hunt, or both ways, you then look to see what your season are in the states. Everything is going to generally have a season, whether it be whitetail season. I don't know what it is in California where you're at, but there's going to be whitetail seasons. There's going to be turkey seasons. There's going to be bear seasons. There's going to be deer. Every animal is going to have its season when they're open to hunt. We just wrapped up here in Michigan and in most states, turkey season. The toms are real active in the spring as they're trying to mate with the females. In many states, you can only hunt till noon because they figure about noon, based on some old science, was when the hens would head to their nest, and they don't want the hunters walking through the fields shooing the hens off the nests.
Oh, interesting.
So they would let you hunt till noon, and by noon you were done. And then after that first couple of weeks where the nests were safer and the eggs were in better shape, then you could hunt the full day. But you're out there to shoot a male turkey, and you call them in, whether it be by, and again, it's going to depend on where the states you are, but mostly you're using mouth calls, slate calls, things of that nature. Regarding what you're talking about, coyotes, there is usually a predator season. Some states, like where I used to live, Texas, coyotes were never a closed season. You shot on sight.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
New Mexico, I believe, is like that as well. I don't know California. They may or may not have a season. My guess is they don't. Usually
Yeah.
for something like a coyote, they're generally people will shoot them year round. Um,
Mm-hmm.
coyotes coyotes are a unique animal in that they have really spread. They used to only be, for the most part, west of the Mississippi, and they're now east of the Mississippi. You'll find them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some unique research on that. There's a book called Coyote America, and the author's name is escaping me at the moment, but it's really a detailed outline of coyotes and what has happened to them as we've hunted them across the United States for the last several hundred years, and
Interesting.
the way they've spread. So, yes, I mean, there people will shoot coyotes. If you're looking for the fur, you're going to want to shoot one in the wintertime when the fur is nice and thick and it makes a nice pelt. You shoot them
Okay.
now, they can be, it's kind of mangy. They've dropped their winter coats. Their fur coats are stringy. I don't know anybody that eats them. I have seen people try to cook them. There are some videos you can find on YouTube of trying to cook coyote. Even though I like to think I'll eat just about anything, I'm not eating a coyote. Um, Too much like a dog. So,
Yeah.
uh, but coyotes out there, whitetail, um,
What is whitetail?
a whitetail deer,
Okay.
and they're in many areas here in Michigan where I'm at. They're like mice with hooves. There's so many of them,
Oh, really?
and the auto industry hates it
Mm-hmm.
because they they run out in front of cars. It's very we're having a unique issue right here in Michigan now, in that um, as everything's like everything else, it's all about money,
Mm-hmm.
and there's budgetary restraints, and the state has gone to the counties and said, hey, when you see dead deer on the side of the road, pick them up and dispose of them. And the counties have said, no, the state of Michigan, you own the deer, you pick them up. We don't have time to devote that to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they've said, well, no, you pick them up. So it's gone back and forth. And in doing that, nobody picks them up. So we have dead deer all along the sides of the road that just rot.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
and there are animals that come and eat them, coyotes, birds, things of that nature. But nonetheless, it still is not the best when you're driving down the road and there's a bloated white-tailed deer laying there that has been there for a week in the summer sun.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's rough.
they don't smell real good.
Yeah. So
So,
how is like let's take like so for example like the white-tailed deer kind of thing. How is it determined and who determines how often and when you can hunt a white-tailed deer and like when they and why you know you're allowed to hunt a white-tailed deer as opposed to something else, you know?
well, every state's going to have a state game department.
Uh-huh.
For example, Michigan has the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. That department's whole existence is to protect the natural resources of the state of Michigan, uh, anything in the land, sea, air, whatever. They handle that. They do studies based upon every 1 acre or every section of property, a section being what 640 square acres, I think, is capable of holding X amount of wildlife. Let's say white-tailed deer. So they do their numbers and come up and say, okay, our carrying capacity is, I'm making a number up here, but let's say that they determine that their carrying capacity is 5 deer an acre.
Okay.
And some particular area has 12. Well, then come deer season, they know that they're going to, through history, they know that they're going to lose a certain amount of deer to car accidents.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to lose a certain amount of deer to predation from coyotes and things of that nature. And they're going to lose a certain amount of deer from just natural death.
Okay.
Whatever those 3 areas don't cover that need to be removed are then surplus deer that they need to issue licenses for.
I see.
So if they have 8 deer in an area that are considered overall surplus, they know that they're going to lose 4 of them from cars, natural causes, predation, and old age. That means they got 4 more that they can remove out of that area without hurting that deer herd. And when I
Okay.
say remove, I'm not talking about there still could be 8 deer left there in that particular zone. It's what do we have above the carrying capacity of the land?
Okay. And then so is the carrying capacity, is that determined like, so it's not really a nuisance to humans living in the area, or what kind of the area can support, you know, I don't know. How is that determined,
That'll
I
be part
guess?
of it. Most of it would be determined on vegetation. Can
Okay.
that area support? Because deer, they have to eat.
Right.
And whether you like it or not, they're a renewable resource. So we can't stop them from breeding. So
Hmm.
if every doe has 2 fawns the next year and all those fawns survive, you're going to run out of food in that area. If the deer live on average 5 to 6 years in age,
Hmm.
you can see it's just going to keep stacking up to the point where you got more deer than you've got food to take care of them.
Right.
And so, yes, part of it will be food, water, uh, good habitat, because a deer, if they're hungry and there's no food, they'll eat whether it's good for them to eat it or not. They'll browse. Um,
Hmm.
Here in Michigan, they can top what like a Christmas tree farm. The
Oh,
farmers are out there trying to grow their Christmas trees to make that nice triangle shape, and a
hmm.
deer will walk through and eat the tops off of them, which
I
in
see.
essence wrecks the tree. If they're hungry, they don't do that all the time, but if they're hungry, they'll look for small young pines to eat. And there's a
Wow.
number of other things. Uh, there's plants that you can plant uh, that, like my mother's house, we always joke because everything she's got planted around it, they live out in the country. It might as well be a salad buffet for a deer. They love it all. And
Yeah.
so she's had to go around and plant some stuff that they don't like to try and keep them, because otherwise they'll just eat the whole garden up. And if any of the plants in the wintertime are under the snow, they'll come in and dig the snow up and eat them.
Hmm.
So she's had to start slowly taking some of that out and putting in plants that they don't like.
Right.
Doesn't have to, but they're going to eat the stuff. So it's just it's over and over every year trying to replant the same stuff. So you just plant something they don't like.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay. Well, so now I see the kind of the frustration of, a deer eating your Christmas tree that you've been growing, or something like that. But how, like, how is it? Why is it our responsibility to keep that stuff in check if you took those instances out of it? You know what I
sure.
mean?
Well, if you don't keep them in check, who else is going to?
Well, I mean, I guess. Well, what happened before there were human hunters around? How was that kept in check then, or how did that
You
all work?
you had full predators available, which aren't available now. We've taken a lot of the predators out of the system,
Uh huh.
and let me look something up here. I saw it earlier today. Um, there wasn't the number of animals. We've created conditions for the whitetail
Uh huh.
to explode.
Really?
We've created conditions for them to exponentially grow to a point where, uh, for example, my uncle's a farmer. He farms about 350 acres, grows soybeans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might as well be a food plot for deer.
Okay.
They're covered with it. So the food sources from farming and everything, uh, as well as the habitat, you can go into many cities around here, and the deer are right in the cities, laying in people's front yards. And really, what it comes down to is a safety issue with one of the things is car accidents.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody hits a deer, A, it's bad for the deer, but B, it can be bad for you too. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I know people that have been killed from being hit by the deer coming through the windshield.
That's
So,
scary.
um, not something you necessarily deal with in LA. You're not
Yeah.
going to be driving down through Glendale and have a deer run out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but once you get outside of the greater LA, if you drive to New Mexico or, well, yeah, if you drive to Phoenix or if you drove to Las Vegas or something like that, you're in a chance of seeing a deer, grow.
Mm-hmm.
So then the sheer numbers of them are one of the issues. Uh, there just isn't the predators to eat them, and so you have to keep them in check.
Okay. So were there, have we sort of taken the predators out just for human safety too in the area?
I would say most of the predators were taken out for livestock safety.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It wasn't so much about being fearful of, um, you know, the big bad wolf coming and getting us.
Uh-huh.
It was more along the lines of, if I have my cows or sheep or anything out in the field, and they've
Mm-hmm.
got calves or young, whatever that predator is will come along and eat on them. So it's easier just to get rid of the predators.
Okay. That makes
And that
sense.
was, I mean, that was kind of a through the 1800s, through the early to mid 1900s. That was kind of the thought process of eliminate all the predators, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I see. So is there an argument that we should bring predators back then and somehow protect our livestock from predators?
That's a much bigger conversation than
Oh, okay.
than hunting. Uh, Predators are being brought back in some areas.
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of mixed on it because I guess I don't live in those areas, but if you talk to somebody in Idaho, they're going to have probably a completely different view than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a much bigger conversation than just hunting in general,
Okay.
because it, northern Michigan has had the reintroduction of the wolves. Some of them have migrated down to the southern peninsula, the northern southern part of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any around here. We really don't have any bears around here where I'm at, which are a bear is a major predator of whitetail fawns. That they can keep whitetail fawns in check pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that would be something you'd really find from talking. I know people in, say, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, that would probably argue they'd like to see all the wolves removed again because they're a very efficient predator.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man, it's just so interesting because, yeah, definitely being around here in LA, I'll hear this. I think I just hear the argument all the time of, why don't we just let things take their natural course? But it's like, that's not really how it works because as humans, we're here trying, growing crops, like I said, creating more food sources, and we have livestock to take care of, and we got to think of our own safety, so we don't kill a bunch of deer on the road.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I saw a item issued not all that long ago, and it was talking just about, say, like white-tailed deer. And by the 1900s, now there's a big change that took place. Without you being a hunter, are you familiar with the term market hunting?
No, not entirely.
Back in the late 1800s through the early 1900s, and my dates could be off a bit, so I apologize to anybody listening, but close to that period, you
Mm-hmm.
could do what was called market hunting, where 4 or 5 people might go out and they would just shoot every whitetail they could find, and then that meat would be shipped to a city, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, wherever, to feed
Mm-hmm.
people in the city.
Right.
Well, that was done year round. There was no check system on it. There was no way for the deer to replenish themselves because they were just over harvested.
Right.
So the numbers I saw that were like by 1900s, the early 1900s, there was about 500,000 deer left in the United States.
Wow.
Not very many. When I say deer, I mean whitetail.
Mm-hmm.
There's now, I think from the early 90s, the last time the number came out, there's in excess of 27 million deer.
Ooh. Wow. Okay.
And they replenish themselves every year, and they taste great.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so, but for you as a person that has never hunted before, if you were wanting to get into it, I believe out in California, you guys have a store called Sportsman's Warehouse,
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen those around.
and it's a pretty cool place. You could certainly go into a place like that and talk to a person and say, I want to start. and they would help you with looking at firearms or looking at archery or crossbows or whatever it was. There's local groups you can join, like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the Mule Deer Federation, the National Wild Turkey Federation. All of those groups are sportsman-minded people that put their resources towards generally the animal named in, like, for example, I'm a member of the National Wild Turkey Federation. A lot of our pledges, donations, and everything through the year go to increase turkey habitat across the United States. Well, if turkey habitat is being preserved, increased, managed to be better, that affects every animal that lives in that area for the better. So it's not just how can we make, it's looking to say, how is this made better for turkey, but deer benefit, birds benefit, everything benefits from more wildlands and the improvement of the wildlands. So any of those type of groups would be a great starting point to, say, introduce you to hunting or even just the shooting sports. There's some great, have you ever fired a firearm before? Have you ever fired a gun?
Yeah, just like a kind of a handgun sort of thing.
Okay. There's some great training schools out in the greater Los Angeles area as far as just marksmanship and things of that nature, just to go and get some hands-on experience and have some fun and meet other outdoor people that way as well. So there's a number of ways to start. I don't know all the rules even for Michigan, so I'd be nuts to try and say them for California, but you do have, if you went into a Sportsman Warehouse, they probably have some type of booklet on the counter from the California Department of Natural Resources that outlines each of the species that you have to hunt there, the seasons available, the methods allowed, and you have what is it called? Roosevelt elk or Thule elk? Thule elk, I think. And I believe California is one of the few spots that's found in the States. So you guys have a draw system that I believe you can put in for there. No, California's got some good bear hunting, white-tailed deer. I believe there's just a number of great species available for you to hunt, turkey, that you can then, decide which one you want to try and find. The nice thing is there's plenty of people that'll help you. There's plenty of great Facebook groups, Bow Hunters of America, Broadhead Ways or something of that nature. Those are both generally archery only groups, but they'll welcome anybody in, and all you've got to do is go on there and say, hey, I'm a Broadhead Nation. That's the one. I'm in California. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just getting started. I'd love to talk to some people. Is there anybody that can talk to me, help me out? And I think you'd get buried in responses.
Oh, okay. Sweet. That's cool to know. It's a nice kind of community that people are willing to help out and get others in, huh?
Yeah, and Broadhead Nation is that forum on Facebook is, again, they cover the United States with members from around the world, but they have a lot of West Coast hunters. There's a lot of people from Arizona, Nevada, California, that West Coast area. Broadhead Bow Hunters of America has about 180,000 people that belong to that Facebook group. They're across the world as well. But I tend to see more mid to East Coast hunting things on there versus California and stuff like I do on Broadhead Nation. So either one of those, though, would be fantastic for a new person that wants to get into hunting and to determine what is there is no best way for them, but what is a good way for them to get started. If you use something like a crossbow, which I don't know if it's legal or not in California, but if you used something like a crossbow, your ramp up speed, your ability to learn that weapon and be proficient with it is much, much faster than a traditional bow, like a compound bow. You're going to have much, much more practice time that you're going to need to put in with a compound bow versus, say, a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So, but all of them have their pluses and all of them have their minuses. So I'm always say I'm agnostic.
Okay.
I'll hunt with anything. I just want to hunt.
Yeah.
So I'm open. I don't criticize anybody for the method they use as long as the method is legal.
Mm-hmm. So is that kind of how you would maybe determine how you got started, is to see kind of what's allowed in your area? And then are there restrictions on, like the type of animal you can shoot with the type of weapon?
Sometimes,
Okay.
um, I took a lot of years off. I lived in Arizona for about 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm kind of kicking myself. I don't know why I stopped hunting. I just did.
Oh,
And then my job moved me to Texas, and I was now living in a state that had something I was never exposed to before, which was wild hogs.
okay.
And I absolutely fell in love with hunting wild hogs, which I believe you have in California. And uh, Texas is covered with them.
Yeah.
And so I was using my rifle. I bought a rifle, was rifle hunting, joined a small lease, and met some people that were into crossbow hunting. And they, long story short, they ran a booth. Texas Parks and Wildlife Department used to have a huge outdoor show once a weekend at their headquarters in Austin. And they had all sorts of stuff there, including this booth that if you had never shot a crossbow before, you could shoot a crossbow.
Sweet.
And they said, hey, why don't you come in and help us run this booth? And we're just going to have people shooting. I said, okay. So I did that for a weekend. Must have pulled that stupid crossbow back about 1,000 times. But it was great. I had a great time, met a lot of people. And just the ability to expose people to a new weapon was fantastic. And that person that was running it, she and her husband were huge crossbow hunters. They happened to have an extra crossbow that they were going to put up on Craigslist for sale. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, don't bother, I'll buy it.
Nice.
So I bought it. It was an older Horton model crossbow, took it home. I had a little bit of a bigger backyard. Didn't know I wasn't supposed to be shooting those in the city. Had some targets set up and was just, practicing away, having a good time.
Right.
And enjoyed it. Sold that crossbow, moved around a little bit, bought a few different crossbows, and I absolutely love hunting with them. I'm handicapped, so I can't walk. I mean, I can walk, but I walk with a cane, so
Mm-hmm.
I can't ride a bicycle. I can't. There's a lot of things I can't do, and so for me, I'm not going to get out and go tromping through the woods and stalk quarry and anything like that. I'm going to sit in a blind, and whatever comes in front of me is what I'm going to see. And if it doesn't come in front of me, well, good luck for them that day.
Right. Right.
And so I have this crossbow that I absolutely love. I may do some target shooting with it here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just a blast to shoot. Uh, I have my different firearms I like to hunt with, and have different calibers for different things. So, yeah, it's kind of a hobby. I love to go to the range. I'll go to the range and shoot. I might take two pistols and a rifle, or a couple rifles and a pistol, or whatever. Go spend
Mm-hmm.
a few hours at the range shooting, and it's just a matter of wanting to stay proficient. I'm not great. I'm not some long range shooter that's going to be trying to shoot something at 1,000 yards. That's not going to happen. I kind of with my rifle cap myself at a max at 300 yards,
Okay.
which is still a long shot. That's 3 football fields.
Yeah.
Um, I took my antelope. I have one gun that's a little bit of a flat, nice shooter, and I took my antelope at 410 yards. And
Wow.
that was the longest shot that I've made on a live animal, not a paper target.
That is a long way away.
It was, and it was, I'm not sure I would do it again. Uh, because if you shoot something at 400 yards out, you got to walk 400 yards out to get it.
Right.
So that's kind of the laziness in me saying that I just don't want to shoot that far.
Yeah.
But most everything else has been 100 yards or less in my shots.
Okay. So if someone's kind of starting out like myself, would you recommend, kind of starting with a smaller animal like a turkey or something like that? Or like, I mean, I would assume hunting a bear versus, a turkey or warthog is a big difference.
Not really. I mean, they're each a little different. Bears are actually quite easy as
Uh-huh.
far as the methods go. Well, let me rephrase that. I've hunted bear over a bait barrel before, so they're coming into the spot where I'm sitting. There are
Oh.
men and women that go out and they chase the bears with hounds, and and here's a good example of somebody changing their mind. When I was younger, I didn't see a lot of, um, I didn't perceive a lot of sportsmanship to seeing something hunted with hounds, chasing it and shooting out of a tree. Well, as I've gotten older, I started to look at it and I talk to people that hounds hunt, and I realize it's not just a matter of when you watch the TV show, you see them tree one animal, shoot that animal, and you think, wow, there wasn't a whole lot to that. What you miss is the 8 other animals they treed before that.
Mm-hmm.
And what treeing the animal does is it allows you to fully practice conservation and get in there and say, oh, that's a young female. We're going to let her walk because she's still got a lot of life ahead of her. That's a young
Oh.
that's a young female mountain lion, or that's a young male mountain lion. That's
Uh-huh.
not what we're looking for. We want an older male mountain lion. We want an older male bear, whatever it is that particular zone is got the license for. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you to better discern what you're shooting.
Oh, okay.
So then you walk away. So I never really thought about that until I talked to some gentlemen that were from the British Columbia and Manitoba area in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And the one gentleman was telling me that his granddad and his dad had both been houndsmen. And he grew up in the winters eating mountain lion. He thought that was standard table fare, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and um, the basic gist behind him was, as we were talking, was that, yeah, he goes, we could run a mountain lion up the tree and completely get a good look at that mountain lion. We have 5, 10, 15 minutes to look at that mountain lion and determine, is that one that needs to be taken out of the environment, or is that one that, still has a lot of life in it and we should leave alone? He
Yeah.
says, he says, then we can better practice the term. Well, yeah, we can better determine which one to harvest. Where I was thinking for a moment there was, I'm even going to take another step back. There's 2 words that come to mind that people screw up a lot. And one is the term conservation,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is the term preservation.
Okay.
Now, if I asked you the difference, could you tell me what the difference is between those two?
I don't think I could. Difference between like conserve and preserve. I don't know.
They sound pretty similar, don't they?
Yeah.
And I never thought about this until I had been in a college class one time, and there was a lady in the class that was railing against hunting, and she mentioned that, she goes, I'm a conservationist, and it was a wildlife biology class, and the instructor said, no, you're not. You're a preservationist.
Huh.
And she looked at me, she goes, no, I'm a conservationist. And he goes, no. He goes, let's get a dictionary out, and he tossed her a dictionary,
Yeah.
or tossed her something, and preservation means no use of anything, just you're preserving it.
Okay.
Conservation means the wise use, or the judicious use of a resource.
I see. So you like the way
So,
you conserve water, sort of. You don't preserve water.
right, you don't preserve water because you still have to drink it,
Yeah.
but you conserve it by not watering your yard and only
Okay.
keeping it to drink.
Makes sense.
So his point with her was that, being an anti-hunter, she was actually a preservationist. And he goes, I'm not adverse to you not liking hunting. He says, I'm not going to let you attack anybody that's a hunter. But he
Mm-hmm.
goes, I want you to understand the difference in those terminologies, and that you are a preservationist.
Yeah.
And so when you encounter that, and I don't necessarily think that all anti-hunters are bad people, um, and I don't mean that. I think they're a lot of times misunderstood. They don't understand that you don't just go out and just shoot whatever you come across.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, it depends on the season. It depends on the animal. There are some instances where you might do that, but for the most part, you're looking for a older, mature animal that's possibly past its breeding age, has already spread its genetics around in breeding through the years before that, and now you're
Mm-hmm.
removing them from the gene pool, and you're going to let their younger offspring start to breed. Uh,
Yeah.
so again, I'm oversimplifying it a lot because every area is going to be different. But if you yourself want to start to hunt, those are the kind of things you do. Something that didn't exist when I was a kid was YouTube. And for
Mm-hmm.
anybody listening and shows like this, you can go out to YouTube now and see all sorts of hunting shows. There's really good hunting shows on YouTube that are uh, very well produced and cover the genres, whether it be you want to get into fishing, whether you want to get into saltwater, freshwater fishing, whether you want to get into deer hunting, bear hunting, hog hunting,
Mm-hmm.
whitetail. Trust me, there's a video out there that covers it all.
Right. So can you mentioned quickly about hound hunting and that kind of that type of hunting. Can you go over maybe the few most common types of hunting and how they work?
Well, I can go over what I do.
Okay.
There's there's hound hunting, which they use those in various methods. When I say hound, it can be any type of dog,
Mm-hmm.
but certain types of dogs work better for certain types of animals, and that could be black bear, that could be mountain lion. Some states allow you to use dogs to hunt deer with during certain times of the season. Some states don't. So you
Mm-hmm.
really need to know what your state rules are.
Okay.
Um, I hunt strictly with firearm, either firearm slash rifle season or with my crossbow.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only two methods that I've done. I wouldn't, again, I'm handicapped, so my ability to get out in the field is limited. I would love to mountain lion hunt, and the
Mm-hmm.
best way to do that is with dogs to tree them. Uh, but because I walk with a cane and I'm relatively unstable, I could never get into the terrain where they usually, you know, get the lions.
I get you. So
So,
when you say when the dogs are treeing, a mountain lion, what does that mean?
well, mountain lion is really a cat,
Uh-huh.
and if you see a neighborhood cat and there's a bunch of dogs coming after it, it's going to look for a porch to run up, and if it can't find one, it's got claws. It's going to go up a tree.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's the same basic idea with the mountain lion is it's looking for the fastest, quickest way to get away from the dogs that are uh, giving it a hard time. And
Wow.
so
Okay.
if there's a tall tree, it's going to go up that tree. It's not going to stay there forever, but
Mm-hmm.
it will go up the tree and give you, the hunter, some time to stand at a distance and kind of say, okay, this is what we want or don't want. If it's what you
Yeah.
don't want, you take the leashes down, you hook the dogs up, and you pull them away, and you go, and that cat comes down in an hour or so and takes off
Okay. Makes sense. And then did
because
you say people will
she's.
use Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say because that cat's not. Once the dogs are gone, that cat's not gonna hang around to see if they're coming back. He or she's
Right.
gonna jump down and run.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And then will people use dogs to hunt bears too? Is that what you said?
Same premise. Black bear will climb a tree.
Wow.
So they'll, if they have the opportunity to go up a tree to get away from the dogs, they'll do it. And it's the same thing. You're then using that opportunity to see if that's the type of black bear or that's the bear you want to harvest.
Man, I didn't realize dogs would could do that to a bear.
One dog might not, but if there's
Right.
8 or 10 of them, you know
Okay, yeah, I can
that,
imagine.
and it could be, a bear gets a bad attitude and turns, and there's no longer 8 or 10 of the dogs. There might only be 6 or 7 if it takes a dog or two out.
Yikes.
But they generally don't do that. They prefer to run versus fight unless they're cornered.
Mm-hmm. And these aren't chihuahuas chasing the dogs either.
Generally not, no.
Right.
But there is a really cool video on YouTube I saw years ago, and it's a lady's got a goofy house. She's in California, and it's just a weird setup. And she hears her 3 chihuahuas barking like crazy in the garage.
Uh-huh.
And she has a window from her like dining room or kitchen that looks down into the garage.
Yeah.
and these chihuahuas are in the garage, so that yip yip yip, and it is being echoed. She opens the window to tell them to shut up, and they have a mountain lion cornered in the garage. And of course, she's like, "What?" And
What the
so
heck?
here's this 100+ pound cat
Yeah.
cowering in a corner from these three little rat dogs. So um, it just goes to show you that one, it probably would have ate for lunch, but two or three made them nervous, and
Right.
so it ran in. I don't know if it was a young mountain lion. I don't know if it was an older mountain lion. I don't know anything
Hmm.
about that, but it's kind of a funny video just to see that this lady opens the window and there's a big mountain lion cowering in the corner because these three chihuahuas are barking at it.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But yeah, um, excuse me. With you if you ever wanted to be a new hunter, like I said, Facebook has allowed you to connect with so many people in the industry that pre Facebook, pre internet, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. So there's always a lot of events that go on. You're going to have different events that go on in relatively close every year. I don't know how close you are to Lake Tahoe, but
I
I
can get
think
there.
where Lake Tahoe is, I believe, is where the SCI Safari Club International event goes on every year. And that's a
Hmm.
huge event that showcases outdoor stuff. Um, there's, and I'm sure there's the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the National Wild Turkey Federation. I'm sure all of those have events in your area that it would be very easy for you to go to each of their websites and shoot an email off. And usually within a week, I would say, if not sooner, you'd get something that would say, "Hey, we saw that you were interested in this, and we'd love to invite you down," or "Here's what we have coming up," or there. I would think you probably can find shooting uh, like teams and stuff that go out and practice, which is a great way to meet people that are hunting. And you might decide, I don't want to hunt, but I just love, shooting holes in the paper. I love target
Hmm.
shooting, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
fun.
Archery is another one of those things that you don't realize how much is going on in the field of archery as far as target 3D tournaments. There's one that goes on. You ever been to Utah?
Hmm.
There's some big ski resorts up there, Alta and Snowbird,
Okay. Right.
and I don't remember which one of them outside of Salt Lake City does it, but they shut down obviously the ski resorts shut down in the summertime,
Right.
so they go out and put 3D targets up and down all the lanes, and you ride the gondola up to the top of the mountain with your bow and a certain number of arrows, and you then walk down, and there are stations that you stop at. Like this station, you have to shoot an elk that's at not a real elk, it's a 3D target, but you have to
Yeah.
shoot that elk at 100 yards, 50 yards. Here's
Wow. That
one
sounds
with a meter,
awesome.
and you literally just walk down the mountain
Uh-huh.
as you take your turn shooting.
Yeah.
And so there's big events like that have come about, and there's sometimes substantial prize money available to win out of those as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd love to just go to something like that and then just try a few different, you know, try a crossbow and a gun and different things, to see what I like, I guess.
Yeah, and if you look, I don't know about Sportsman's Warehouse. I will do a little bit of research and send this to you, and you can put this in the show notes for any of your listeners.
Yeah.
Uh, there's Cabela's and Bass Pro are now kind of one store, but a lot of
Hmm.
times they have outdoor events where you could come and try and shoot BB guns, pellet guns, crossbows, uh,
Yeah.
things like that. So there's always opportunities to try things. You just got to do a little bit of looking, depending on area, because I just don't know LA enough. Um,
Yeah.
I do know that there are some fantastic shooting schools around LA
Hmm.
that would be in. When I say shooting, I'm talking with pistol.
Okay.
Uh, that they train actors and actresses uh,
Oh, right.
and in the proper methods, but they also train you and I that walk in off the streets.
Hmm.
So there's some fantastic schools for just becoming better at shooting. There's different clubs and organizations around that. So there are a number of opportunities for getting involved. It's just a matter of what you want to do, what's of benefit to you.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I want to just jump back a second here. Um, when you're, let's say you're shooting with like a crossbow or something, and
Hmm?
so are you generally just kind of sitting and waiting and like kind of a hidden little thing and waiting for something to come across, and then you'll get it if it's in your range and what you want?
Yeah, basically, when I had a lease in Texas,
Uh-huh.
lease meant that we gave the landowner a certain amount of money to be able to hunt on his property through the year,
Oh,
and we would set up blinds, um,
okay.
a portable blind. So it's really just something you could go down to a Walmart or a Sportsman's Warehouse or Cabela's, anything. You buy these portable blinds, you order them off of Amazon, wherever,
Mm-hmm.
and you set them up, and we would just leave them up.
Okay.
Once that blind is up, the animals know it's there. They're not dumb.
Yeah.
Uh, what they sometimes have a little bit of a hard time figuring out is when somebody's actually in it or not in it.
Okay.
Depending on scent control and things of that nature, wind blowing, all that fun stuff. But you can, what I would do then, because of my limited mobility, I didn't go out walking. In Texas, I had a feeder that was about 35 yards in front of my blind, and that feeder would go off twice a day, once at around 7 a.m. and another time around 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I would play with the times, but that was close enough. And it would toss some corn.
Okay.
Well, corn's not a great source of food for the animals, but it is a treat. So
Okay.
they know it's there. They know the sound of the feeder going off, and they come into it. And then, depending on what came in, would be whether I shot or not.
Okay. I see. Makes
Uh,
sense.
I was sitting in my blind one day and watching these turkeys coming in. Wasn't turkey season or anything of that nature, and they were all a bunch of hens and jakes, and they were coming in. They pecked at the feeder for a little bit, and then they just started walking towards my blind. And I had the window open. I was sitting there. It was hotter than heck. I had on like a black t-shirt and shorts, and they walked right up to the blind and started sticking their head in the blind to see. I was joking. They were looking to say, "Hey, what are you doing in there?"
Yeah, right.
But there was no fear of them. I mean, had I moved quickly, they probably would have flown backwards and run, but they were just kind of checking out what was going on. And then they walked away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat there and I was waiting for the nighttime feeder to go off because I was looking for a hog.
Oh, okay.
And so I was out there in the evening, but had deer come in. But another thing is there's what are called exotic species, and there's what are called, I can't even think of the right term for them now, native species. Native species usually can only be shot from, say, sun up to sundown,
Okay.
or maybe half an hour before sundown. Or so,
Huh.
like a whitetail deer, it has to be daytime for you to hunt that. You can't shoot them in the middle of the night.
Okay.
A hog is an invasive species, a non-native species. So you can shoot them around the clock. It doesn't matter when.
So is that time restriction just to restrict the amount that is getting killed?
No, it's to give them it's to give them some time when they're not being pressured.
Oh, to let them relax a bit?
Let them relax, let them not feel like they're always on guard, but
Yeah.
it's just a time to give them to chill a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But every state's different. For example, there are no native elk populations in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So an elk is considered an exotic, even though the states around them all have elk, or, like New Mexico is loaded with elk.
Right.
Well, if that elk crosses the border and comes into Texas to eat out of the alfalfa fields, he or she is now an exotic and can be shot day or night.
Yikes.
Where if it's back in New Mexico, you can only shoot during the day.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's why I say know your state game laws. Never be afraid if you see a game officer to stop and talk to him or her.
Yeah.
Ask them for their business card, because trust me, they would rather have you question them on the legalities of doing something versus
Mm-hmm.
writing you a ticket.
Yeah, totally. So are there people who are, is there another type of hunting where people are, just kind of walking around like Elmer Fudd with their shotgun drawn and just trying to get something, or does that not really happen?
No, that happens. I wouldn't say they're like Elmer Fudd, but they definitely walk around. People that will walk around when they rabbit hunt,
Uh-huh.
and uh, here in the winter in Michigan, they'll stomp on piles of brush, or if they have dogs, they'll have the dogs run into the brush, and that shoos the rabbits out, and then they'll shoot the rabbits. So
Oh, okay.
you're gonna walk a large amount of area to do that. If
Mm-hmm.
you're squirrel hunting, you're probably gonna walk um, not far because there's just so many of them, but you might shoot one or two squirrels in one area, then move to another area and shoot a couple squirrels there,
I
and
see.
so you're going to just continually move around, but it doesn't have to be a huge area because there's just so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it depends. People will walk and stalk deer, elk, whatever. I don't, but it would be fantastic. I'd love to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people that will go out and stalk pronghorn, elk, whitetail, mule deer, you name it. If a stalk can be put on turkeys, I've seen them
Yeah.
stalk turkeys and shoot turkeys at 3 and 4 yards. Um,
Wow. That seems like a real art.
yeah, uh, in Africa, you'll see that a lot where they stalk animals and get in there nice and close to them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, yeah, it just depends on the country you're at and the animal you're hunting and the method that you want to use. That's the nice thing is there is no right or wrong method.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go and you want to sit in a blind and hunt over an old apple orchard or a bean field or a feeder and take a book and read a book, that's fine by me. I could care less. I'm not the person to tell you that that's the right or wrong way because I could probably be a couple miles down the road reading a book myself
Yeah.
or taking a nap or whatever.
Relaxing. Yeah.
Yes. So there's no right or wrong way to do it.
So what does it feel like to kill an animal like something large like an elk or even like a hog or something?
The actual to me the most exciting part of it is right till when you pull the trigger.
Okay.
The actual harvesting of the animal to me is kind of the anticlimactic part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just what happens. Uh, Everything up into it is the preparation, the practice, the in this case, if I'm sighting in on an animal, my biggest concern is, do I have a good shot on this animal? Because when I shoot them, I don't want to wound them. I
Yeah.
want to kill them. I don't
Right.
want nobody that I know ever wants to wound an animal and have the animal run off. Does it happen? Yes. Do you put every effort you can into finding a wounded animal to make sure that it A wasn't wounded that bad or B didn't just run off over a hill and die and you try to recover it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Have I wounded animals before? Yes. Have I shot and killed animals before that took forever to find? Yes. And I've also shot ones that have dropped right there.
Hmm.
So it all happens. So really when I'm say with a crossbow, I'm sighting in, I'm making sure what animal I'm at, where I'm at, is this arrow going to hit in a spot where without any, all things being equal, without the animal moving dramatically or something, that's going to create a clean kill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if I can't say that I have any feelings of, remorse or, it is, I'm happy that that animal was there for me to harvest. I'm excited about being able to consume the animal and eat
Mm-hmm.
whether it be the back straps, the tenderloins, the ribs, whatever. I'm excited about the camaraderie that's going to come about because I might have a roast with family, friends, whoever, and I was able to provide that food for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Could I have gone down to Safeway and bought it? Sure. But there's a different taste to it when you harvest it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for the person that goes to Safeway or what is it, Vons or Ralph's,
Yeah,
uh,
whatever.
whatever, for the person that goes down there and buys the roast to cook it on the grill that way, power to you. I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like to know a little bit more about where the meat I'm eating came from versus
Hmm.
the factory farm situation.
Right.
So um, that's again, I can't say that there's any remorse. I can't say that there's anything, you know, I've I've eliminated animals before in just yard cleaning that have made me feel bad. You know, when you're mowing the grass and you don't realize you just went over a mouse nest or something like that, and
Yeah.
it's like, and I feel horrible. I'm sitting
Right.
there going, I can shoot a whitetail, but these 5 little baby mice, I feel horrible about.
Hmm.
And it's because one of the biggest misconception is that hunters don't like animals, and that's the farthest thing from the case. We love animals. Nobody wants to see them suffer,
Yeah.
and so when you do something like that, you're like, son of a gun, you know, I, you, that's something I can feel bad about.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious how I'll react to the situation because I want to experience that. But yeah, just, when you see something like roadkill on the side of the road, like I just feel terrible. Like my stomach turns a little bit driving by that, and I feel sad for that. But so I am curious to see what I will feel like when I actually do kill something like this.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with feeling sad. Generally remember that nature doesn't understand sad versus happy versus, you know, because if it did, you wouldn't have coyotes start eating a deer while it's still alive.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have lions kill an animal and start consuming it while the animal's still alive.
Yeah.
Um, so nature operates different than you and I do. Um, it's not bad harvesting an animal. Maybe for your first time out, you might go with somebody that is going to harvest the animal, and you're just the guest. You're the ride along,
Yeah.
and just you watch. Um, you've got tons of, from what I understand, there's a lot of feral pigs out in not your area in the Los Angeles area, but in the California area. That'd be
Hmm.
a great animal to cut your teeth on to start hunting.
Okay.
Uh, they're a forgiving animal, which means that if you have to shoot them a couple times, um, it just is what it is.
Hmm.
Uh, but they're also plentiful.
Yeah. So
Uh,
what happens after you kill? Like what's the, I guess, how do you get them out of there and start preserving the meat and everything?
well, once you've harvested an animal, there a couple things are going to happen. You're going to generally you're probably going to clean it in
Hmm.
the field,
Okay.
and what I mean by clean it is gut it.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the removal of the internal organs. Some people might want some of the internal organs you're with, heart, liver, whichever it is. I always tell them, knock yourself out. That's something I'm just not going to eat.
Yeah.
So I'll clean those out. And depending on the landowner, he or she may not want you to clean animals out in the field. They may want you to clean them at another location or
Hmm.
have a location set up for it. So let's just say you've cleaned the animal. Then your next decision is, am I going to process this animal myself? Like skin it, quarter it out, cut it up, whatever, or am I going to pay somebody to do it? Uh,
Oh, okay.
I prefer to pay somebody to do it.
Okay.
I can do it. I just, again, I have, because of my hips and my back and everything, it's not the easiest thing for me to do anymore.
Right.
And so when I was living in Texas, I had a place that was both a processor and a taxidermy.
Oh.
So I could drop the whole deer off. And then in about 2 weeks, I was going to get a call to say the meat was ready. And it was
Uh-huh.
packaged, wrapped in butcher paper, and listed out
Wow.
as to this is sausage, this is stew meat, this is ribs, this is whatever.
Oh, that's
And
great.
then I knew that he couldn't complain and say the cape had been cut wrong for the mount or anything like that because he did it.
Yeah.
So then 6 months later, 8 months later after that, I would get a call that the mount was ready if I was having it mounted.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. Here in Michigan, there's a couple big taxidermy places and a couple processing places. I would probably take it over to the processor, have them do what's called caping it out, which is cutting the hide to the specifications of the mount I want to do with it. And then they
Oh,
would
okay.
keep the meat and process the meat for me and create sausage, steaks, chops, whatever I'm having done.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so, but I can quarter a deer, which, let's say you shot something that was out in the field, way out. Your only option was to backpack it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you try to cut the animal into quarters. And it's not exactly quarters because you're not going to take the spine and things like that, but you're going to cut all the usable meat off of it and
Mm-hmm.
have these game bags that you put the meat into, pack the meat into a backpack, and then you and hopefully, depending on the size of the animal, hopefully you and 2 or 3 of your buddies who are
Yeah.
going to come along and help you carry that darn thing out, along with the head and the cape and
Whew.
the horns or the antlers, depending on what you shoot.
Yeah. Man, I can imagine that's a brutal hike.
Oh yeah, imagine carrying out an elk or a
Yeah.
moose.
Oh, jeez.
And there are videos where you'll see a 200-pound leg quarter or a 180-pound leg quarter goes into a backpack, and that guy hoists it on his back, and away he goes. And he's got 5 trips to make because maybe he's the only one there, so he's got to carry it all out himself.
Man.
And some places make you leave the hide and the horns
Uh-huh.
or the antlers, whatever. Again, depending on what you shoot. And those have to be the last thing that comes out
Oh, why is that?
because they want to make sure you bring all the meat first.
Oh, okay, I see.
So, you're back and forth 4, 5, 6 times back and forth up and down a mountain or hills
Yeah.
or wherever you're at.
Mm-hmm. So if you do leave like the organs and stuff kind of in the field there, is that generally going to get eaten by other animals, or do they not eat that?
No, something will eat it.
Oh, okay.
A bear, a coyote, birds, something will come along and eat it. Buzzards.
Cool.
Once they get the idea and see them there, it'll be right on it and eat it.
Nice. And then so how is it seems tough to enforce the rules and stuff where, trying to get somebody to take all the meat out first and then the antlers, so making sure nothing's getting wasted and everything like that. How does enforcement of this stuff work?
Well, it can be, but a lot of the sports people are self-enforcing.
Okay.
So, A, you do it because you'll do the right thing even when somebody's not looking.
Good.
B, you want the meat because that's really what you like.
Mm-hmm.
Or C, somebody decides to leave the meat out there and does something stupid, like says to somebody, "Oh yeah, I shot that animal and just took the horns."
Mm-hmm.
Then you call one of the 800 poaching lines. And it goes to your national DNR, goes to your local DNR, and they go out and they usually work in an area for a long enough time. They kind of know who to watch, and you'll see DNR trucks. They usually never wash them because they want them to blend in, and they don't want that reflective markers to be seen.
Yeah.
And so you'll see they'll back in on a back road where maybe Farmer X has been out there on his tractor and he's heard several gunshots that aren't normal in that area.
Mm-hmm.
So he calls the DNR, and the DNR sets up in there and says, "Well, I'll watch for some gunshots." And they walk the field. And maybe they find a gut pile. So they might do a little research. They might, they'll do an investigation. They might set up and see if somebody says, "Oh, I got lucky there once. I'll come back again."
Mm-hmm.
And they police it that way.
Wow.
But yes, a lot of sports people, generally, if they catch on that somebody's doing the wrong thing, it's twofold. If you're doing the wrong thing, you're stealing. You're stealing
Mm-hmm.
from everybody else, but you're also giving everybody else the bad name.
Right.
So it a benefit to say, "Hey, knock it off," all the way up to, I had to turn you in, or, I turned you in anonymously or whatever.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I mean, it seems like, even people who are like anti-hunting and they're, preservationists, it seems like we all kind of have the same goals of, wanting animals to thrive and have a, healthy, ecosystem and all that stuff, but also have, allow us as humans to survive and do our stuff and crop and everything. So do you find, being in the community that most hunters are conservationists?
Yeah, you'll always run across that bad apple,
Yeah.
but they don't tend to last very long.
Okay.
If they're vocal about it in any means or fashion, uh, it, everybody that I know, everybody that I've associated with, and I do a podcast on hunting and fishing, and with having just about 100 guests on there as of now,
Mm-hmm.
every one of them will tell you the same thing. They hunt within the rules. They're not everybody's successful all the time. You want to take an ethical shot, and if that means that deer is farther out than you're comfortable shooting, or if that deer is close enough but never gives you a good shot, you're not going to force something just to claim it. You're going to say, man, if I just couldn't get the shot, I couldn't get the shot.
Yeah.
If that deer goes behind a tree, you're not going to say, well, I got this little 1-inch spot that I might hit, so let me shoot. Now,
Right.
does that mean somebody won't do that? No.
Yeah.
But the longer they're in the field, the more you work with them, the more you talk with people, the more you help you instill those values in them to understand that they want to be ethical. And that's more than just saying it. It's
Mm-hmm.
doing it when nobody's watching you. And if that deer doesn't come in to be in view for a good shot, you still got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still going to be more deer that come along. So,
Yeah.
You just kind of enjoy it that way.
Right. Man, cool. This is great, Jason. I really appreciate talking to you and, kind of sharing all the stuff of how to get started and just your perspective on, the conservation and everything. Because, of course, everyone always hears sides of the story and, it's hard to, I don't know. It's just hard to determine everything that's going on, but I'm definitely interested in getting started in this and kind of learn more about it. So,
Well, and the hard part, I think, and I'll wrap it up, is Disney has created an environment for kids that as they grow up really doesn't exist.
mm,
The lion doesn't get along with all the other animals and hold up its cub and sing songs. And,
right. Yeah, right.
that's all a fake thing. Africa's a completely different environment.
Mm-hmm.
You get to North America and, you look at things like Bambi and all these movies, the hunter is always portrayed. You even made a comment about Elmer Fudd.
Mm-hmm.
Hunters are portrayed as a goofball, as a mean person, and that carries through in a lot of environments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really not the case. There's with the self-imposed laws, and what I mean, there's several laws that are in place where when I buy ammunition, when I buy a rifle, when I buy a bow, anything of that nature, there's a tax on that, the Robertson-Pittman Act.
Mm-hmm.
That tax, if you don't buy any of that stuff, you don't pay that tax. We buy that tax money then goes and gets split between all the states and the federal government to be used for wildlife management.
Oh, okay.
And so you have a wild area that you like to go, let's say it's somewhere out there and you like to watch birds. I'm making something up, but you like to go to that area. That area could be completely funded and preserved via hunters' tax revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But you as the non-hunter can still use it. You're not told, oh, you can't come in here because you don't hunt.
Yeah.
You're told, don't litter and have a good time, enjoy yourself.
Right.
But those type of acts are out there that are not imposed on people that are not hunting those type of tax revenues. So it's a unique way. There's a lot of money involved as far as the taxes and so forth. And it helps to keep the states with wild areas, because what you don't want to see is the state run out of money and say, well, I've got 600,000 acres here. I guess I'll sell it to the guy that wants to put condos and golf courses in because I can't afford to maintain it because we lost the hunting revenue.
Right. Yeah.
So there's much more nuances to it than just, hey, this guy shot a deer. That's just one piece of the whole puzzle. But I'll be happy to send you some interesting things on the Robertson-Pittman Act. I probably just said it wrong, so I apologize to anybody listening.
No worries.
And some things out in the LA area that are of more of a reference to you. And I'll send you that link on that Coyote America book. And that author also wrote a great book called American Serengeti. I'll send you a link to that, which is the Missouri Breaks area in Montana. They're slowly buying up farms and ranches along that area to create it back together and put all the megafauna, the buffalo, the wolf, the grizzly bear, everything back into, turn that back into what it would have looked like when Lewis and Clark went through there.
Oh, sweet.
So the book's called American Serengeti. The author is a really nice guy. But I'll get you the links to those so you can share those with your listeners as well.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll throw all that stuff in the show notes. And then where can we find you and your podcast?
My podcast is called Outdoor Adventures with Jayson. Jayson is spelled Jayson. You can go to my website, which is www.oawjs.com. And you can find me at Outdoor Adventures with Jayson on Instagram and Facebook.
Perfect. Sweet. Yeah, I'll have links for all that stuff too, so people can get to that quickly. And sweet. Thanks, Jayson. I appreciate you being on.
Sure. And if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out to me. I kind of bumbled through this, so there's no way I could have all the answers, but if you tell me where you're at, I can try and put you in touch with people in your area to better answer any questions you might have. And same with you, Travis. I'd be happy to reach out to some people I know out in California and see if I can't put you guys together and at least get you some exposure to shooting, say, a crossbow or a bow, a rifle, things of that nature.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to just try some of that stuff out and see what feels right.
We'll go from there.
Sweet. Yeah, well, thanks again, Jayson. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.